Yo, it's Tug from We Make Best, and today we're diving into what's the highest possible damage turn you're able to do in Flesh and Blood. And before we get into the video, quick shout out to our friend Michael Murray for giving us the idea, doing the math, and messaging us about it over on our Patreon. So to get right into it, let's take a look into the cards and deck that we're going to be using. So firstly, we'll be using Kano, as this deck has access to cards like Aether Wildfire, Aether Flare, and Blazing Aether, with these cards allowing us multiplicative damage output rather than the regular additive damage output that other decks have. Now, in addition to the multiplicative damage cards as mentioned before, we have to figure out how much resources we're going to be able to realistically produce to pay for this entire combo. So assuming we have 4 blues in hand, 3 energy potions on the field with a perfect pitch stack, this allows us to theoretically set up 3 Tome of Aether Winds. They'll each draw us into 2 more blues, and doing the same with 3 more Tome of Fiendals, which, when including the Kano activation cost for each of these tomes, should net gain us 15 more resources. And lastly, add in a cheeky little tunic counter on top, leaving us with a whopping 34 resources to pay for this combo. Now to get into it, like I said before, we're going to start with 4 blues in hand and 3 E-Pots on the field, Wildfire and Arsenal. We would begin our combo by Kanoing into a Tome of Aether Wind, which will draw us into 2 more blues, repeating this for all 6 tomes in our deck. Keep in mind that the yellow tomes do cost 1, so we're going to have to reduce one of our blues to be able to afford all 3 of those, but after that process is complete, we should be ending up with 9 blues in hand, meaning we have 27 resources in hand, 6 from the potions on the field, and 1 from our tunic. Now, we're going to use 5 of those resources to activate Storm Striders, Crucible of Aetherweave, play the Wildfire from Arsenal, and pay 1 for the Metacarpus trigger. This means the Wildfire is going to hit for 6 and buff the rest of our spells this turn for an additional 6. And since this is going to cost 5 resources all up, 5 resources minus the 34 to start with, which should leave us at 29 resources all up right now. After that, we then Kano into another Wildfire and play that with a Metacarpus trigger, which should cost us another 6 resources. This Wildfire should come in for 5 itself, and then add in the 6 from the first Wildfire, meaning it deals 11 damage, along with an additional buff effect for the rest of our spells this turn. Do this process again for the last Wildfire, which will cost us 6 more resources, leaving us down to 17, but this one should come in for 5 itself, plus 6 from the first Wildfire and 11 from the second, all up being 22 damage for the third Wildfire. Next up, we're going to do the same process for 2 Aether Flares, but do note we don't have enough resources to Metacarpus these Aether Flares, so the first flare will be coming in for 42 thanks to the 3 Wildfires, with the second flare coming in for 81 after that. So this puts us at 162 damage so far, with the next spell we play this turn being buffed by that same amount. Resource wise, all of that will cost us 8, leaving us at 9 resources, meaning we can activate Kano 3 more times to banish 3 Blazing Aethers. And this is where the math gets crazy. So the first Blazing will come in for X equals 162, which is the damage that we've dealt this turn, but now you have to add in all the buff effects from the previous spells in this combo. So the previous Aether Flare is going to add an additional 81 damage to the 162, putting it up to 243. But to top that off, the Wildfire buffs also come in for another additional 39, putting the total damage of the first Blazing Aether to 282. So now the second Blazing Aether is going to be a little bit easier to figure out, thanks to the first Blazing eating the flare effect. So the second Blazing is going to be X equals 444, but again, add on top the Wildfire effects. So 444 plus 39 from the Wildfires makes the second Blazing come in for 483, and repeating this process for the third Blazing makes it come in for a total of 966. Now, once we just add up all the damage dealt from each card, you're left with an insane 1,893 damage in one turn. And the funny thing is, this still isn't enough damage to one-shot your mum.